It is May 1943. The air above western Germany is thin, sharp, and trembling. The clouds hang low like pale curtains stretched across a bruised sky. At 30,000 feet, the roar of engines fills the void, a violent harmony of pistons, propellers, and fear. Before we begin, if you love uncovering forgotten World War II stories, take a second to subscribe. It keeps history alive. Below them lies the gray patchwork of the Ruhr Valley, Germany's industrial heart, churning smoke and fire into the air. Above it, a formation of P-47 Thunderbolts from the 56th Fighter Group sweeps across the heavens. They are vast, almost ungainly machines, thick-bodied silver beasts bristling with guns. To the German aces watching from a distance, they look heavy, too heavy to dance in the deadly sky. The Luftwaffe pilots, men trained in precision, discipline, and arrogance, bank their Messerschmitt Bf-109s into the wind. To them, these new American machines appear sluggish, easy prey. Another example, perhaps, of the Allies' over-engineered foolishness. Then the world turns upside down. The Thunderbolts dive. In seconds, their wings vanish into the clouds, leaving behind only contrails that twist like falling meteors. The German pilots, astonished, follow, but their controls shudder, wings strain, and airframes scream. What should have been an easy pursuit becomes a nightmare. The P-47s are gone, swallowed by gravity, plunging toward Earth faster than anything the Germans have ever seen. And somehow, impossibly, they survive the dive. The story of the P-47 Thunderbolt begins not in the skies over Germany, but in the factories of Republic aviation, in the anxious months before America entered the war. When designer Alexander Kartveli conceived it, the U.S. Army Air Corps wanted a high-altitude fighter, fast, tough, and able to escort bombers deep into enemy territory. But Kartveli went further. He built a monster. The P-47 was the heaviest single-engine fighter of its time, weighing nearly 8 tons fully loaded. It carried the massive Pratt & Whitney R-2800 Double Wasp, a 2,000-horsepower radial engine so large that pilots joked it was a plane built around an engine. Its 8 50-caliber Browning machine guns spat a hail of lead that could shred anything in its path. To the men who first saw it, the Thunderbolt seemed too big to fight. Many American pilots doubted it at first. They had flown nimble P-40s or sleek Spitfires, aircraft that turned like dancers in a ballroom. The P-47 was a bulldozer by comparison, loud, armored, and unapologetically American. But beneath its brute appearance hid a secret: the dive. To a German ace like Heinrich Hoffmann of Jagdgeschwader 26, combat was art, a contest of grace and intellect. His Bf-109 could twist and climb with elegance. Dogfights were duels, not slugfests. The P-47, he thought, would be easy. Yet the first encounters defied logic. American pilots dove away when cornered, not to flee, but to fight gravity itself. German pursuers followed and found themselves in a trap of physics. At over 500 miles per hour, their airframes buckled, controls froze, and wings fluttered toward disintegration. The P-47, designed for power dives, held firm. Its thick wings and robust frame could handle forces that snapped lighter aircraft apart. It sliced through the air like a silver hammer falling from heaven. German pilots began to whisper, "Die Amerikaner tauchen wie Steine, und sie leben noch." The Americans dive like stones, and they live. Every Thunderbolt that vanished into the clouds below carried the same sound, a long rising scream of air tearing past metal, the sound of defiance. To German ears, that sound became legend. Records from Luftwaffe reports in mid-1943 described these encounters with disbelief. One report from Jagdgeschwader II noted, "Enemy fighter of new type, capable of extreme vertical speed, impossible to pursue beyond safe limits." Another, filed by Oberleutnant Karl Boris, admitted that the American radial engine fighter does not break in dive. Our aircraft loses stability past 800 kilometers per hour. Even within the U.S. Army Air Forces, pilots began to realize what they had. Major Francis S. Gabreski, who would become one of America's top aces, said of the Thunderbolt, "She wasn't elegant, but she'd take punishment. She'd bring you home, and when you dove, nothing could catch you." By autumn 1943, the P-47 had earned its nickname, the Jug. It was short for Juggernaut, a name born from its bulk. But soon it came to represent something more, unstoppable power wrapped in American steel. Every machine has a soul, and for the Thunderbolt, it was sound. The whine of the turbo supercharger, spinning like a banshee at high altitude, became its anthem. German ground crews could hear it long before the planes appeared, a metallic shriek cutting through the hum of war. To Allied pilots, that sound meant survival. To Germans, it meant the enemy had arrived, heavy, loud, and fearless. It was the sound of American industry turned into thunder, the echo of assembly lines in New York and Ohio resonating over the fields of France. The roar of the Thunderbolt wasn't just noise, it was a statement of abundance, of a nation that could outbuild, out-engineer, and out-endure its enemies. By late 1943, the Thunderbolt dominated the medium-altitude skies. But its legend was only beginning. Soon these same heavy fighters would escort bombers over Berlin, face the Me-109 and FW-190 head-on, and dive straight through flak and fire, carrying with them the raw industrial heart of America. As the German aces reclimbed into the clouds, their pride shaken, they realized something profound. The war in the air was no longer a contest of elegance. It was a test of endurance, and the P-47 had just rewritten the laws of survival. By early 1944, the skies over Europe had turned into vast corridors of fire. American B-17 flying fortresses and B-24 Liberators crawled across the cold, blue in endless streams, thousands of them, heavy with bombs and hope. Below, the Reich's factories, railways, and oil plants waited like black targets drawn on a map. Protecting those bombers became the job of the P-47 Thunderbolts. At first, they could not reach far enough. Their fuel tanks ran dry before the bombers returned from Germany. But even within limited range, the Thunderbolts tore through intercepting Luftwaffe formations. When German fighters rose to strike the bombers, the Jugs fell from the clouds like steel hawks, diving from 30,000 feet straight into the chaos. It was not finesse that made them deadly. It was momentum. A P-47 could dive faster than any fighter in Europe, over 500 mph, and pull out without breaking apart. The German FW-190s and Bf-109s, lighter but more fragile, often disintegrated if they followed too long. Pilots learned quickly. Never chase a Thunderbolt downward. The Germans called them Tauchende Teufel, diving devils. Each time one screamed through the air, it carried the deep growl of the R-2800 engine, the mechanical heartbeat of American industry. For the men in the Luftwaffe, that sound grew haunting. They knew the enemy had more metal, more fuel, more pilots. Even when they shot one down, two more appeared the next day. One German ace reportedly muttered, "They fight with factories, not men." By spring, Thunderbolts began carrying drop tanks, extending their range deep into Germany. They escorted bombers all the way to Berlin, breaking the Luftwaffe's last sense of control. The P-47s no longer ran from a fight. They sought it. Over Schweinfurt, over Regensburg, over the Ruhr, the heavy fighters dove through flak and chaos to clear the sky. Their 850 caliber guns ripped through the formations of WWII like lightning tearing canvas. The German High Command started to notice the shift. Air superiority was slipping. Each time a Thunderbolt returned home, scorched and bullet-riddled, it landed on Allied soil still breathing, its engine coughing smoke, wings full of holes, but the pilot alive. The aircraft's bulk, once mocked, had become its blessing. In the words of one American pilot, "You could punch 100 holes in her, and she'd still bring you back. She wasn't a beauty, she was a survivor." That survival was the new measure of power. The Luftwaffe had built elegant machines for swift duels. America had built a hammer for total war. By the end of 1944, the Thunderbolt had flown more than 500,000 sorties and destroyed over 100,000 enemy targets on the ground. German morale eroded not only from loss, but from disbelief that such a massive machine could outfight them in the very element they had once ruled. The sound of the P-47's dive, that piercing shriek through the air, became a symbol across Europe. To those on the ground, it was the sound of liberation approaching. As the war neared its end, the Thunderbolt's purpose evolved once again, from air duelist to ground destroyer, from guardian of bombers to punisher of retreating armies. In that final year, the Jug became not just a weapon of war, but a symbol of what America could build: loud, durable, and relentless. The war was ending. By spring 1945, Europe was a scarred continent. Bridges shattered, cities hollowed, skies quieter than they had been in years. Yet now and then, above the smoking fields of Germany, that familiar growl still echoed, the deep thunder of the P-47 returning home. For the American pilots, the Jug had become more than a machine. It was a companion, brutal, loyal, unyielding. It had carried them through flak storms, engine fires, and the long silence of sky-to-ground combat. They had learned to trust its weight, its strength, its strange defiance of fear. On the ground, villagers once terrified of aircraft learned to recognize the sound. That rolling rumble meant liberation. To the French, Dutch, and Belgians who looked up from the ruins, it was the sound of help, of something vast and determined pushing back the dark. The Pratt & Whitney R-2800, once just an engine, had become a voice. America's heartbeat made mechanical. Its steady rhythm spoke of factories that never slept, of workers welding through the night, of a nation whose power came not from conquest, but from endurance. Even German prisoners admitted their awe. One Luftwaffe mechanic said after the war, "We thought no plane that big could fight like that." But it did. It never broke. The Thunderbolt's legacy was not elegance or beauty. It was survival. It was proof that strength could be built, that freedom could be forged from noise and steel. When the last sorties ended, the sky fell silent again. Many of the Jugs were scrapped or left to rust in forgotten airfields. But for those who flew them, the sound never faded. It remained, that piercing dive, that thunder roll, the promise that even when the world collapses, something unbreakable endures. The P-47 became a symbol of democracy itself. Heavy, imperfect, sometimes underestimated, but impossible to destroy. In every dive it made, there was a message. Freedom survives because it is willing to fall, to endure the pressure, and to rise again. And so, long after the guns fell silent, the roar of the Thunderbolt still echoes, not in the clouds, but in the memory of a world that learned how to fight, fall, and fly again.